It's another beautiful day, so let's go on a PodWalk together about growth. So almost every day I wake up and at some point when I'm attempting to perform one of the songs on my album or write a song, I do have this feeling, this thought of, who am I kidding? What on earth am I doing? Why at the age of 50 did I decide to become a singer-songwriter? And if you just leave aside the reasons for doing it because I enjoy it, because it fulfills me, all of that kind of thing, which obviously make whatever happens this not a waste of time, right? So aside from those reasons, I am also doing this for an external reason. So I do have external goals, functional goals for becoming a great singer-songwriter. I do want to create a catalogue of songs that can pay me in my future as I get older. I do want to do that. It's not simply about doing it because it fills me up, because it fulfills me, because I love it, because it helps me understand more about the creative process. There is an external reason to do it as well. I believe that I am going to make this singing-songwriting thing externally successful. I don't believe I'm going to become the next Taylor Swift or Harry Styles, of course, and I don't believe that I'm going to go touring all around the world and become a massive superstar. The external goal that I'm attempting to achieve, what will make this successful for me, is to create a catalogue of songs that will continue to pay me when I'm old and grey. But of course, all of the external evidence that I've found, that I can see out there, points to this being a pipe dream. I mean, how many artists have made serious careers when they started doing it at the age of 50? I mean, of course, I didn't exactly start doing this at the age of 50 because I had a previous artist career. But this whole singer-songwriter thing is a very different thing, right? So I'm essentially going to launch as a new artist at the age of 51. I started when I was 50, but at the age of 51, I'm going to launch a new artist. How many artists have made serious careers in those conditions? And what's more, I don't want to tour. I mean, I don't mind doing the odd gig here and there, but I can't really see myself traveling the world again. So how is that possible? And really, when I take into account as well the fact that at this point I'm not a particularly good singer. I mean, how am I going to be a particularly good singer? I sound like a bloody choir boy all the time, right? So all of this evidence is on one level making it seem like a pipe dream. What I'm doing right now is either foolish or some kind of massive midlife crisis, or maybe a combination of both. And so occasionally, in fact, probably once a day or thereabouts, it does hit me and I'm like, what am I doing? But when you think about it, if you are choosing to define whether what you're doing is successful just based upon external results, so let's just push aside the internal reasons, the personal reasons for doing it because I love it, because it fulfills me, etc. So let's just take the external results on their own, okay? We can measure if what I'm doing is foolish on 3 occasions. There's going to be 3 points at which we can measure whether what I'm doing is foolish. Okay. Number 1, when it succeeds, right? So when it succeeds, or if it succeeds, then we can say, oh, actually, it wasn't foolish because it worked, right? So that's one point. Another point is when I die or become incapacitated in some way, because at that point, presumably, I'll have to stop. Right? So at that point, we'll be able to measure whether what I'm doing right now is foolish or not, just based upon external results. The other point we can measure that is if I give up, because again, I will have stopped it and we can say, okay, that was foolish. Therefore, given that those are the only 3 points when I can actually measure based upon external results if I'm being foolish right now, therefore the only one which I need to worry about is, I mean, of course, I do worry about becoming incapacitated and I don't like the idea of dying, but the only one that I need to worry about in terms of this project is whether I give up. Because if I give up before I succeed, then what I'm doing is foolish, right? And what determines whether I give up, if I'm motivated to continue, is dependent on what I believe is or isn't possible. So what I ask myself in this situation is there a fundamental law of the universe here which states that I can't become a successful singer or songwriter on my own terms starting at the age of 50? And while I can say that there is a fundamental law of the universe that means I can't sprout wings and fly to the moon by flapping them, there is no fundamental law of the universe that I can see that means that I can't become a successful singer-songwriter on my own terms starting at the age of 50. What I see is that there's probably a set of beliefs, a little constellation of beliefs out there that reinforce the status quo. It's very similar to the 4-minute mile. Before Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile, a lot of people didn't believe it was possible, so therefore it wasn't broken. Similarly, if out there the zeitgeist, the culture, believes that it's not possible, that music is a young person's game, that there's nothing that you can do, if you haven't done it by the age of 30 or some nonsense like that, then it's never going to happen. If those are the beliefs, those beliefs reinforce themselves. And I think that aside from there being a belief about what is or isn't possible, those beliefs are based on another more fundamental set of beliefs that I'm going to talk about in the next few episodes, on these PodWalk episodes. Because quite frankly, I am quite surprised that I find myself so motivated and engaged by what I'm doing. Of course, we all have ups and downs. As I'm talking now, I haven't made music for the last couple of days just because there's been some stuff going on here that I've had to take care of. So the tide does come in and out, but I am still engaged and excited to do it. How has that come to be? Looking at my situation, what I realize is that through coaching people since 2010, I've come to question this constellation of beliefs, which I think lies behind why you don't see older people making a success of becoming an artist. And I've replaced that constellation of beliefs with other beliefs that I've found to be both more useful and, crucially, closer to reality. They actually make more scientific sense as far as I can tell. And you might be wondering right now why I'm talking about coaching, because you might think, well, how has teaching helped you come up with these beliefs? And actually, coaching is very different from teaching. So if you're interested in how I came to coaching and how it's different from teaching and why specifically using the coaching frame has allowed me to build these beliefs, then click a link in the show notes and you'll find a link to a playlist of podcast episodes where I talk about the difference between coaching and teaching, and it'll give you more background on how I've come to these new realizations. You see, at this point in my life, I am extremely motivated to do my 1,000 Songs in 1,000 Days project and attempt to make 4 albums this year, even though I have a very difficult situation here at home. And to me, these are not pie-in-the-sky dreams. These are, in fact, incredibly rational projects for me to do. For me, who I am, and in my situation, becoming a great singer and songwriter, in fact, is one of the most important, practical, and rational projects I could possibly undertake in my life right now for my future. Because through coaching so many musicians, songwriters, and producers, and essentially in doing that, performing thousands upon thousands of experiments, I now have these 3 core beliefs that have led to this kind of focus and determination. And I'm sure that you can take these beliefs on as well. First, by learning what they are, which is what we're going to cover in the next few episodes, but then also by taking action as if you believe them, because this is how beliefs often work. In order to do something, you need to believe that it's going to work or that it has some value, right? But if you're not sure about that belief, one of the ways that you can change your beliefs is by actually doing something which will reinforce that belief. And the first belief is lifelong growth. I could always improve. And what that essentially means is as long as I'm not incapacitated, I always have the opportunity to improve. Now, this doesn't mean that I can become as good as, for instance, Stevie Wonder on Inner Visions, which is my favorite Stevie Wonder album, because that is almost like the opposite belief, in that the belief that you could always improve is not a fixed point. There's no fixed point there. And in fact, the belief that there is no fixed point is another of the beliefs we'll be covering in a later episode, because really the three beliefs that I'm going to cover, this little constellation of beliefs that is allowing me to do these things which seem to be flying in the face of all evidence, this constellation of beliefs are in fact different facets of the same belief. So in believing that I can always improve, what I'm saying is there is no fixed point. I am always able to be better today than I was yesterday. And when you think about it, this ought to be a belief which is fairly uncontroversial, but it seems to be something that a lot of people don't believe. I mean, if you say, I can't do this, I find this thing really hard, it's just not something that I can do. If you want to do it, then the solution isn't to stop doing it, right? It's to continue doing it so that you can get better at it. And I think where it comes from, where this belief comes from, is being told either that you can't do that, you're terrible at this, you've got no talent for it, or being told that you do have a talent for it. Both of those messages that often come from well-meaning, or sometimes not well-meaning, family, friends, the world around you, are going to lead to this situation where you don't believe that you can improve. So let's talk about this talent belief, and I'm going to talk about it as if it's true, right? So I don't actually think that talent is as important, that innate attributes are as important as most of the world seems to think they are, right? That you have certain attributes that mean you're not naturally as good as someone else. While there is definitely truth to that, I just believe it's so full of holes as to be essentially untrue. And click the link in the show notes where you can get another episode where I go deeper into what I think about this idea of talent. But let's just, for now, for the purposes of today, assume that talent is a fact that we all have to deal with. Okay, so I'm just going to steel man the talent argument. And let's pretend there is somebody who wants to make music, who has very little talent for it, right? They've got no natural ability. In fact, we could even go further and say they have significant challenges with making music. There are certain things that they just find really hard, but they want to do it. Even that person, if they want to do it, please tell me, where is the ceiling on their improvement? Where does that come from? If they can learn how to play a note, if they can then on top of that learn how to play 2 notes to make a very simple chord, and then they can learn to play 3 notes, at what point does that improvement end? Where is the ceiling? Can you tell me where it is? Look at your own experience, your own life. The only ceiling that there is the point at which you decided to stop doing it, where you thought, well, this is never going to work. I'm not going to be able to do this. Can you see how it's a self-reinforcing belief? Because the choice not to do it is often as a result of believing that there is a ceiling, that you're not cut out for it. If you have learned to do anything, you can learn to do something else. Because I am suggesting that we can improve throughout our lives, I'm not suggesting that means you can become as brilliant as Stevie Wonder. But I am suggesting that anyone, literally anyone, as long as they're not incapacitated and they have the motivation to do it, they can become better than they are now. And let's talk about motivation for a second. In my experience, the one thing that tends to stop people, me included, demotivate people from this constant improvement is comparing yourself to someone else who is much better. So this happened to me just the other day. At the moment, I am recording vocals for my latest album because I've got very much time to do fancy arrangements and everything. I'm really focused on making the performance as good as it can be. So I'm really getting into listening to some absolutely amazing singers. And there's a particular school of singing, there's a school of female singers who are amazing. The way that they sing is just incredible. It's almost like It's pure emotion, and the way that they deliver what they're singing just blows my mind. I've never really focused on it as much as I have been recently. And so I've been listening to these singers, and then you can imagine I come to pressing record on myself, and it's like, and so I compare myself to what I'm hearing out there, and I'm like, and start thinking, I'm never going to get there. It feels like, it is a very, very long way away where I would like to be. But what happened the other day was that my UAD stuff stopped working. It started doing some really weird stuff. So what I had to do, because I use Luna to finish stuff, which is the UAD DAW, and it doesn't work unless you've got the UAD stuff. So I was like, okay, let's just see. I'm just going to see if I can sidestep this problem and make it work in Logic. So I opened up a previous version of the song that I was attempting to record in Logic, because I started these songs in Logic, and that was from a couple of months ago. And I pressed play on this version of the song, right, that I'd recorded, and I was absolutely blown away. It was like I was listening to a child singing it, right, compared to what I'm doing now. And so instantly I felt motivated and excited. I was like, in just a couple of months, my understanding of how to perform these songs and really purposefully get across the meaning of them has transformed. It's so much better than it was before. In that version in Logic, while it was in tune and I was singing the notes, it was something really bland and vanilla compared to what I'm doing now. And again, I'm not saying that what I'm doing now is brilliant, but it is so much better than it was a couple of months ago. So instantly I got excited, and this is exactly what I mean. While you, of course, want to get inspired and learn from the people who you love, if you take inspiration from them, you cannot compare yourself to them because you do not want to be them. They are already them. As an artist, you want to be yourself and you want to improve yourself. And that involves, number one, believing in this lifelong growth, believing that you can always improve. And number two, for motivation, comparing yourself to you yesterday. Because I am not Stevie Wonder and will never be Stevie Wonder means nothing about my ability to improve. And this belief in lifelong growth forms the foundation of this little constellation beliefs that I'm going to go into in more depth in the coming couple of episodes. Because as I said, they are facets, different facets of essentially the same belief. But I think they all fit together as a little constellation of beliefs, which, if you take them on, will allow you to move forward in your music career, even though you might feel that what you're doing is foolish or will never work or a waste of time. So as I said, there'll be a link in the show notes to the various different other podcast episodes that I've talked about today. So click that link to listen to them. And until next time, onwards and upwards.